The sterile scent of disinfectant hit me before I could even open my eyes. My head throbbed with a dull, heavy pulse, and every breath felt like dragging broken glass through my chest. As my vision slowly cleared, the white tiles of the ceiling came into focus. "Ethan? Hey, stay still. Don't try to sit up just yet," a voice said beside me. I turned my head with difficulty, spotting my older brother standing by the heart monitor. "Marcus? Where am I?" "You're at St. Jude's," Marcus said, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You were in a terrible car accident on the highway, Ethan. Your brakes failed, and your car flipped twice. You've been in a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. 3 weeks?" My voice sounded like gravel. I cleared my dry throat, panic rising in my chest. "Where is Chloe? Is she outside in the waiting room?" Marcus pulled back his hand, his expression suddenly tightening. He looked away, staring down at the floor tile. "Marcus," I insisted, forcing myself to lean up against the pillows. "Where is my wife? Why isn't she here?" "Ethan, you need to focus on resting right now," Marcus replied, his voice dropping into an uncomfortable whisper. "Your vitals are barely stabilizing." "Answer me," I snapped, my pulse spiking on the monitor screen. "Has she been here? How many times has she visited?" Marcus let out a long, heavy sigh and looked back into my eyes. "She hasn't come, Ethan. Not once. Not a single phone call to the front desk, either." The room went completely silent except for the rhythmic beep of the cardiac monitor. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight crushing my chest. "That's impossible," I stammered, shaking my head in disbelief. "We had an argument before I drove off, but she wouldn't just— She loves me, Marcus. There has to be a misunderstanding." "I wish there was," Marcus said gently. "I tried calling her every day during your first week in the ICU. She sent every call straight to voicemail." "Give me my laptop," I said, pointing frantically toward the small table near the wall where my personal belongings sat inside a plastic bag. "Give it to me right now." "Ethan, you aren't in any condition for work." "It isn't for work," I yelled, coughing as a sharp pain shot through my ribs. "Just bring me the laptop, Marcus. Please." Reluctantly, Marcus grabbed my computer from the bag, powered it on, and set it carefully across my lap. My hands trembled as my fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols to connect directly to my home automation server. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, watching over my shoulder with concern. "I installed a closed-circuit camera system in our house last year," I murmured, logging into the secure cloud portal. "High-definition feeds in every main room. If she's not here, I want to see what's happening at home." "Ethan, maybe you shouldn't look at this right now," Marcus cautioned, reaching for the screen. "No, I need to know," I insisted, pulling the laptop closer. I selected the feed from the living room, setting the playback date back 2 weeks ago. The video loaded instantly, crisp and clear on the screen. My breath caught in my throat. Chloe was on the screen, pouring 2 glasses of expensive red wine at the kitchen island. But she wasn't alone. A tall man in a tailored gray suit stepped into the frame, wrapping his arms casually around her waist from behind. It was Julian Cross, the chief operations officer from Apex Digital, my main corporate rival. "Is that Julian?" Marcus whispered, his jaw dropping in shock. "Shut up," I breathed, my hands turning ice-cold against the warm metal of the laptop keyboard. On the screen, Chloe turned around in Julian's arms, resting her hands against his chest with a bright, beautiful smile, a smile she hadn't shown me in months. "Are you sure the doctors said he won't survive?" Chloe's voice echoed through my laptop speakers, sharp and crystal clear. The head surgeon confirmed the brain trauma was severe. Julian replied on the video, taking a slow sip from his wine glass. "Even if Ethan wakes up, his cognitive functions will be completely ruined. He won't be a threat to us anymore." Chloe let out a soft laugh, clinking her glass against his. "To new beginnings, then. With Ethan out of the picture, the board will have no choice but to sell his technology assets to Apex." "Not just the company assets," Julian corrected her, pulling a small silver key from his pocket. "Where did you say he keeps the hard drives for the primary source code?" "In the wall safe behind the painting in his office," Chloe said, turning toward the hallway. Come on, I'll show you. He set the combination as our anniversary, but I already unlocked it yesterday. My heart hammered against my ribs so violently, I thought the surgical stitches would burst. I watched as my wife of 5 years walked hand in hand with another man into my private workspace, actively handing over the proprietary software platform I had spent 7 years building from scratch. They're taking everything, I whispered, the harsh reality smashing through my denial like a sledgehammer. She didn't just abandon me, Marcus. She handed him the keys to my entire life. Marcus slammed his fist against the bed rail, his eyes burning with rage. I'm calling the police right now, Ethan. This is grand larceny and God knows what else. No, I said, my voice suddenly dropping into a chilling, absolute calm. Don't call anyone. Marcus stared at me like I had lost my mind. What do you mean, don't call anyone? They're stealing your life's work while you lie broken in a hospital bed. If we call the cops now, Julian's lawyers will tie this up in corporate litigation for years, I said, closing the laptop screen with a firm snap. I don't just want them stopped, Marcus. I want them ruined. Ethan, look at yourself, Marcus urged softly. You can barely stand. I looked down at my bandaged hands, feeling the cold, hard rage replacing the agonizing heartbreak inside my chest. My body will heal, I said, looking up at my brother with unwavering focus. And when I walk out of this hospital, Chloe is going to find out that her husband is very much alive. Are you sure you can handle this? Marcus whispered, steadying my arm as we stood outside my front door. I have to, I replied, adjusting my collar over my neck brace. Just stick to the story. Marcus pressed the doorbell. Seconds later, the heavy oak door flew open, and Chloe stood in the entrance. Her eyes widened in dramatic shock before she let out a choked sob, throwing her arms around my neck. Ethan! Oh my God, Ethan! She cried, burying her face into my shoulder. The hospital called and said you were being discharged, but I couldn't believe it. I thought I lost you forever. I stood still, letting her performative embrace wash over me. Chloe, take it easy. My ribs are still healing. I'm so sorry, darling, she whimpered, pulling back to wipe away fake tears. I was just so terrified. When the police told me about the crash, I completely collapsed. She experienced severe emotional trauma, Chloe. Marcus interrupted smoothly, his voice laced with cold professional detachment. The head injury caused significant memory loss. He doesn't remember the accident, or much of the weeks leading up to it. Chloe blinked, a faint flicker of relief crossing her eyes before she masked it with concern. Memory loss? Oh, my poor baby. Do you remember who I am? Of course I remember you, Chloe, I said, playing the helpless victim perfectly. You're my wife. But everything else is just a blur. Where is my phone? What happened to my work at the office? Don't worry about work, Ethan, she said quickly, guiding me inside by the elbow. Your company is in good hands. Julian Cross from Apex Digital actually offered to manage your software assets while you recover. Isn't that generous, Julian? I pretended to struggle with the name. Isn't he our competitor? He was darling, but he stepped up when you went down. Chloe lied, smoothing down my jacket. He's saving your legacy. I see, I murmured, staring into her eyes. I guess I owe him a lot then. Later that evening, while Chloe was downstairs arranging catering for an impromptu dinner party, I locked myself in the bathroom and dialed a private number. Detective Lynn, a sharp voice answered on the second ring. It's Ethan Vance, I said quietly. Did you set up the financial tracking on Julian's offshore accounts? We did, Detective Sarah Lynn replied. The moment he tries to liquidate or transfer your proprietary patents, our wire fraud team will flag it. How are you holding up at home? She's playing the devoted wife, I said, catching my reflection in the mirror. Pale, bruised, but resolute. And Julian is coming here tonight. I've placed encrypted microphones in the living room and the study. Keep your head down, Ethan, Lynn warned. If they realize your memory is intact, they might take drastic measures. Do not break character. I won't, I said, hanging up just as a knock rattled the bathroom door. Ethan, guests are arriving, Chloe called out. I walked into the dining room 10 minutes later. The room was filled with company board members, But standing near the fireplace, holding a glass of scotch, was Julian Cross. He walked straight toward me with an outstretched hand and an arrogant grin. "Ethan, look at you," Julian cheered, wrapping his hand around mine in a firm grip. "A true medical miracle." "Julian," I said, forcing a weak smile. "Chloe was just telling me how much you've done for my company while I was in the ICU." "Just doing what any good friend would do," Julian said smoothly, taking a sip of his drink. "Your mind needs rest, Ethan. Don't stress about the technical details. Just focus on getting your health back." "I appreciate that," I said, leaning heavily against the table. "My head still hurts whenever I try to remember my code." "Then don't try," Julian said quickly, exchange a subtle, knowing glance with Chloe across the room. "Leave the heavy lifting to us." As the dinner progressed, guests congratulated me on surviving the crash. I played the frail, confused survivor, nodding along to conversations I barely pretended to understand. Around 9 o'clock, I feigned exhaustion. "I think I need to lay down for a bit," I announced, rubbing my temples. "Please, everyone, stay and enjoy. I'll bring you some water in a moment, sweetie," Chloe said, kissing my cheek. I headed upstairs, but instead of going to the bedroom, I slipped into the dark hallway alcove above the main foyer and pulled out my smartphone, connecting to the concealed microphones. The audio fed directly into my earpieces. Below, the sound of guests leaving echoed through the foyer until only 2 voices remained. "Is he really clueless?" Julian's voice came through crisp and clear in my ear. "Completely," Chloe replied with a light laugh. "The doctor said his short-term memory is shot. He thinks you're his savior." "Perfect," Julian said, his tone turning cold and businesslike. "The board meets on Thursday. I need him to sign the patent transfer documents tomorrow morning before he regains any clarity." "He'll sign whatever I put in front of him," Chloe assured him. "He trusts me implicitly. Once the patents are in your name, Apex buys out Vance Tech for pennies, and we get our payout." "And what about Ethan after the payout?" Julian asked. "He gets his medical bills paid, and I file for divorce," Chloe said coldly. "He won't have the money or the mind to fight back." Sitting in the dark at the top of the stairs, listening to my wife casually plan my financial execution, my heart didn't ache anymore. The pain had burned out completely, leaving behind an icy, razor-sharp clarity. They thought I was a helpless victim trapped in my own broken mind. They had no idea that every word they spoke was being recorded, encrypted, and backed up directly to Detective Lynn's secure server. I carefully walked back into the master bedroom, took off my neck brace, and sat on the edge of the mattress. When Chloe finally opened the door carrying a glass of water, I looked up with a soft, clueless smile. "Everything okay downstairs, honey?" I asked softly. "Everything is perfect, Ethan," she smiled, handing me the glass. "Tomorrow is going to be a brand new day." "Yes," I agreed, taking a slow sip. "It certainly is." The morning sun streamed into my home office, but the warmth did not reach me. I sat at my desk, looking down at a stack of legal documents Chloe had placed in front of me alongside a steaming cup of coffee. "Just sign right here on the dotted line, honey," Chloe said, resting her hands gently on my shoulders. "It's for the best." I feigned hesitation, running my hand over my face. "Chloe, these are the primary patent rights to my whole platform. If I transfer these to Apex Digital, I won't own anything I built." "Ethan, please be realistic," Julian said, stepping out from the corner near the bookshelf. He crossed his arms, staring down at me with feigned pity. "Your medical bills from the ICU are astronomical. Vance Technologies is hemorrhaging money without active management. Signing this over to Apex covers your debts completely. Is there really no other way, Julian?" I asked, looking up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "This platform took me 7 years. There is no other way, Ethan," Chloe chimed in, her voice taking on a sharper, pressuring edge. "You are in no condition to manage a corporate entity right now. Do you want us to lose our house? Do you want to ruin our financial future because of your ego?" I need a little time to review the technical blueprints first," I stammered, pulling the papers toward myself. "I have to make sure the core source architecture is packaged properly before any transfer." Julian exchanged a quick, impatient look with Chloe before sighing heavily. Fine. You have until tomorrow morning. If these papers aren't signed by 8 o'clock, Apex withdraws the buyout offer, and you can handle the bankruptcy court yourself. Thank you, Julian. I'll have everything ready, I said softly. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I locked my office door and placed an encrypted call to my lead cybersecurity engineer. Nora, it's Ethan, I said the moment the line connected. Ethan? Nora Hayes gasped on the other end. Thank God you're safe. I heard you were discharged, but Chloe blocked all my calls to your home. Listen to me carefully, Nora. I don't have much time, I said, leaning over my desk. Chloe and Julian are forcing me to sign over the software patents tomorrow. They think I have permanent memory damage. What? That's insane, Nora exclaimed, her tone instantly shifting to protective fury. We can't let them take your life's work. Should I alert the Federal Regulatory Board? Not yet, I replied firmly. I need you to help me build a decoy framework. I want you to clone the core source code structure, but embed self-executing corruption scripts inside the encryption layer. Make it look completely legitimate on the surface. Nora went silent for a second, the sound of rapid keystrokes echoing over the line. A digital Trojan horse? I can do that, Ethan. If they execute the source code without your private master key, the corruption script will trigger and lock down their entire corporate server network. And make sure to add silent GPS tracking tags, I added. I want Detective Lynn to track every single server that attempts to process or sell that data. Consider it done, Nora said with a confident smile in her voice. I'll upload the encrypted decoy package directly to your secure drive within 2 hours. Thank you, Nora. You're the only person at the company I can still trust. We're going to win this, Ethan. Stay safe. By evening, the modified files were saved onto a black USB drive, neatly clipped to the signed legal documents on my desk. I sat back in my chair, watching the clock tick past 8 in the evening. A part of me, a small, foolish fragment of the man I used to be, still hoped Chloe would hesitate. I hoped she might show a single thread of genuine remorse. The door handle turned, and Chloe walked in. She was no longer wearing her soft, comforting smile. Her expression was completely cold and analytical. Is it done? She asked, not bothering to ask how I felt or if I needed rest. It's done, I said, sliding the folder and the USB drive across the mahogany wood. The patent transfer is signed. The source code files are all on that drive. Chloe picked up the folder, opening it to inspect my signature. A slow, chilling smirk spread across her lips. She didn't look at me with tenderness. She looked at me like a landlord looking at an evicted tenant. Good, she said, snatching the USB drive off the desk. Julian is waiting downstairs. He's taking this straight to the server host. Chloe, wait, I said, standing up slowly. Are we going to be okay? You and me. She stopped near the door, letting out a short, harsh laugh that cut through the silence like a blade. Okay. Ethan, let's stop playing this ridiculous game. You served your purpose. What are you talking about? I asked, forcing my voice to tremble. You were always so weak, she sneered, stepping closer, her eyes flashing with pure contempt. Always slaving away in this office, talking about ethics and hard work. Julian has real ambition. He knows how the world actually works. Once the transfer clears tomorrow, I'm filing for divorce. Chloe, please, I pleaded weakly. 5 years of marriage. Does that mean nothing to you? It meant a lifestyle, Ethan. A lifestyle you can no longer provide, she said, clutching the stolen drive tightly in her hand. Don't bother waiting up for me tonight. I'm staying at Julian's. She turned on her heel and walked out, slamming the heavy wooden door behind her. I stood alone in the quiet office. The performative affection was gone. Her true nature was laid completely bare. I didn't cry, nor did I smash the furniture in anger. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed Detective Lynn. They just took the decoy drive, Detective, I said, my voice steady, calm, and razor-sharp. Trigger the wiretap. I sat in the command center at Advanced Technologies alongside Nora and Detective Sarah Lynn, staring at the monitor streaming the Apex digital launch live. On stage, Julian stood under bright spotlights in a tailored tuxedo, grinning confidently at hundreds of investors and journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian's voice boomed through the speakers. Today, Apex Digital redefines cloud architecture forever with our new flagship platform, Apex Vanguard. Nora leaned over her keyboard, tapping a single key. He just initiated the primary database deployment, Ethan. The Trojan script is executing right now. Watch this, Detective Lynn said, crossing her arms as her radio hummed with officer updates. The arrest team is already positioned backstage. On screen, Julian pressed a remote control to demonstrate the system's real-time processing capabilities. Observe as Vanguard processes 10 million transactions per second without a single millisecond of latency. Suddenly, the massive LED display behind him flashed bright crimson. Lines of corrupted code cascaded across the screen, replacing the Apex logo with a stark prompt. Critical security failure. Unauthorized system access detected. Data encryption locked. Murmurs erupted across the auditorium. Julian's confident smile froze, his eyes widening as he furiously tapped his presentation remote. Please bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. Just a minor technical glitch in the demonstration environment. It's not a glitch, Julian, Nora whispered with a triumphant grin. Your entire network is officially locked down. The stream audio picked up Chloe's panicked voice from the front row as she rushed toward the stage steps. Julian, what is happening? The stock price is dropping 10% every 30 seconds. Shut up, Chloe, Julian snapped, sweat glistening on his forehead under the harsh stage lights. Get the head systems engineer on the phone right now. Before Chloe could move, four uniformed police officers stepped onto the stage from the wings, led by Detective Lynn's partner. Julian Cross, the lead officer, announced into a microphone, his voice cutting through the rising chaos of the crowd. You are under arrest for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and attempted murder. Gasps erupted through the auditorium as the audience scrambled to record the scene on their smartphones. Attempted murder? Julian shrieked, backing away from the officers. Are you insane? On what grounds? Detective Lynn pressed a button on her tablet, broadcasting her voice directly into the stage audio feed via the police tactical bridge. On the grounds of forensic evidence recovered from Ethan Vance's vehicle, Mr. Cross. We matched your fingerprints and shop receipts to the cut hydraulic brake lines on his car. Chloe's head snapped toward Julian, her face draining of all color. What? Julian, what is she talking about? You told me Ethan just lost control on the wet highway. Don't listen to them, Julian yelled, struggling as the officers pinned his arms behind his back. Chloe, call our attorneys. Use the offshore accounts. There are no offshore accounts, Mr. Cross, Detective Lynn stated coldly into the microphone. Federal agents froze every asset linked to Apex Digital 10 minutes ago. You monster! Chloe screamed, lunging at Julian on live national television. You lied to me. You told me we were going to take over his company legally. You set me up. Set you up? Julian spat back, laughing bitterly as the officers forced him toward the stage exit. You came to me, Chloe. You gave me his safe combination. You begged me to destroy him so you could keep his fortune. That's a lie, Chloe sobbed, turning toward the sea of flashing camera lenses. I knew nothing about this. I am a victim here. I love my husband. I leaned forward, picking up the microphone connected to the auditorium's public address system. My voice echoed loudly through the speakers, silencing the entire room. If you love me, Chloe, why did you tell Julian to leave me in the ICU to die? Chloe froze in her tracks, staring up at the ceiling speakers in absolute terror. Ethan? Ethan, is that you? Look at the main screen, Chloe, I said calmly. Nora tapped her keyboard once more. The crimson error screen on stage vanished, replaced by the crystal-clear CCTV footage from my home office. On the display, the entire auditorium watched as Chloe opened my safe, handed the proprietary hard drives to Julian, and toasted to my death with a glass of red wine. Text messages between Chloe and Julian scrolled across the bottom of the screen in giant text, detailing their months of planning, financial theft, and betrayal. No, turn it off. Please, turn it off, Chloe shrieked, covering her face as the press photographers snapped hundreds of photos of the damning evidence. Ethan, please. I was manipulated. He made me do it. The board of directors just held an emergency vote, Chloe, Detective Lynn added, watching the live market feeds on her tablet. Apex Digital has declared bankruptcy, and the district attorney has issued a warrant for your arrest as a co-conspirator in grand larceny and conspiracy to commit murder. Two female officers approached Chloe, taking her by the arms as she collapsed to her knees, weeping on the podium. Ethan, please save me, Chloe wailed into the broadcast camera, her makeup running down her face. I'm your wife. You promised to protect me. I stared at the monitor, watching the woman who had tried to erase my existence get led away in steel handcuffs alongside the man she had chosen over me. I felt no wild joy, nor did I feel the sharp sting of heartbreak anymore. There was only the quiet, heavy settling of justice. Cut the feed, Nora, I said softly, standing up from my chair. With pleasure, boss, Nora replied, shutting down the screens. Detective Lynn turned to me with a nod. Julian and Chloe won't see the outside of a prison cell for a very long time, Ethan. It's over. No, I said, looking out at the morning sun rising over the city skyline. The nightmare is over. My life is just beginning. My private office on the top floor of Vance Technologies was quiet as the afternoon sun faded behind the city skyline. I was reviewing our Q3 expansion plans when my intercom buzzed. Ethan, there is someone at reception asking for you. Nora's voice came through the desk speaker. She doesn't have an appointment, but she refuses to leave. I paused, setting my pen down. Who is it, Nora? It's Chloe, Nora replied, her tone dropping into a cautious whisper. Do you want me to call security to escort her off the premises? I took a slow, deep breath, looking around the glass walls of my new company. Months had passed since the trial, but I knew this moment would eventually come. No, I said quietly into the intercom. Send her in, Nora. It's fine. A minute later, the heavy frosted glass door opened. Chloe stepped into the room, and for a second, I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, arrogant woman who had once stood in my living room, wearing designer clothes, was gone. Her hair was pulled back loosely, her eyes were bloodshot and red, and she wore a plain, faded coat that looked entirely out of place. Ethan, she whispered, her voice cracking as she took a hesitant step forward. Hello, Chloe, I said, staying seated behind my mahogany desk. I didn't expect to see you here. She closed the door behind her, pulling her coat tightly around herself as tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't know where else to go. Nobody will talk to me anymore, Ethan. Nobody. You shouldn't be here, I said softly, keeping my voice even. What do you want? I came to say I'm sorry, she sobbed, burying her face in her trembling hands. She collapsed onto the leather chair across from my desk, her shoulders shaking violently. I lost everything, Ethan. The board stripped me of my license. My accounts are frozen. The bank foreclosed on the house last week. I don't even have enough money to pay my apartment rent. That is the consequence of your choices, Chloe, I reminded her calmly. You aligned yourself with a fraud. Julian is going to prison for 20 years, she cried, looking up at me with raw desperation in her eyes. His trial ended yesterday. The judge convicted him on all counts: wire fraud, grand larceny, and attempted murder. His lawyers abandoned him, and he tried to shift all the blame onto me until the prosecutor showed the jury our text messages. I know, I replied. Detective Lynn kept me updated on the proceedings. He lied to me about everything, Chloe yelled, slamming her palm onto the armrest. He promised me wealth, power, and respect. He told me you were holding me back, that Vance Technologies was a dying vessel. But he was just using me to get to your blueprints. I was stupid, Ethan. I was so unbelievably blind. Julian didn't force you to give him my safe combination, Chloe, I said, meeting her gaze squarely. He didn't force you to cheer when you thought I was dying in an ICU bed. You made those choices freely. Chloe flinched as if I had struck her. She wiped her streaming eyes with her sleeve, reached in her coat pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. With trembling fingers, she opened it and placed it on the desk between us. Inside sat my old platinum wedding ring, the one I had taken off the night I watched the CCTV footage. I kept it, she choked out, pushing the open box toward me. Every single day since the crash, I held on to this, Ethan, please, look at me. I finally see the truth now. I finally understand what you built, not just in business, but in our life together. You were the only man who ever truly cared about me. I stared down at the polished platinum band, feeling a heavy wave of memories wash over me. Holding that ring brought back years of my life. I remembered staying up until 3 in the morning editing her executive presentations. I remembered putting my own dreams on hold so she could climb the corporate ladder at her firm. I had sacrificed my own happiness, my time, and my peace of mind to construct a future for her, asking for nothing in return except her loyalty and trust. My heart still remembered loving her deeply back then. Looking at her now, broken, penniless, and sobbing in front of me, I didn't feel rage or hatred. I felt only a profound, quiet sadness for the person she had allowed herself to become. I finally recognize your true value, Ethan, she begged, reaching across the desk to grab my hand. Her skin was freezing cold. Give me a second chance, please. I don't care about the money or the corporate titles anymore. We can start over in a small apartment. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I've changed. I gently slid my hand out of her grip. I picked up the small velvet box, picked up the ring, and held it out toward her. Take it back, Chloe, I said softly. No, Ethan, please, she wept, shaking her head frantically. Keep it. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to me anymore, I replied, placing the ring back in her palm and folding her fingers over it. The man who wore this ring believed in a marriage that didn't exist. If you still feel pity for me, why can't you forgive me? She sobbed, clutching the ring against her chest. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? I do forgive you, Chloe, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. I forgive you completely. I don't carry any hatred or bitterness toward you anymore. A momentary spark of hope lit up her eyes. You do? Yes, I nodded gently. Because holding on to anger only harms the person carrying it. Forgiveness frees my heart from the past. But forgiveness and trust are two entirely different things. What do you mean? She whispered. Forgiveness heals the wound, I explained, standing up from my chair and buttoning my suit jacket. But it cannot rebuild broken trust. Trust is built on repeated choices. And when you chose to betray me, you destroyed the foundation of our life forever. I can forgive you, but I can never trust you again. Chloe stood up slowly, the harsh reality of my words crashing over her. She stared at me, realizing that no amount of tears, begging, or regret could undo the choices she had made. It's time for you to leave, I said quietly, walking toward the door and opening it for her. Chloe clutched the ring tightly in her hand, wiped her face, and walked out without saying another word, finally understanding that some opportunities disappear forever once respect is destroyed. 1 year after the crash that nearly claimed my life, the executive boardroom at Advanced Technologies was filled with bright evening light. Streamers decorated the glass walls, and a large digital banner displayed our newest milestone, the Vance Global Founders Grant official launch. I never thought software development could feel this satisfying, Nora said, holding up 2 champagne flutes as she walked over to my chair. We already received over 5,000 applications from young developers across the country. 5,000 in the first 3 hours? I asked, taking one of the glasses with a smile. That exceeds even our highest estimates. People want to build things that matter, Ethan, Nora said warmly. You gave them a platform that prioritizes security and transparency instead of corporate greed. They trust what you've built here. We built it together, Nora. I reminded her, looking around the room. None of this happens without your dedication. Marcus stepped up beside us, adjusting his suit jacket with a rare, relaxed smile on his face. If you two are done patting each other on the back, I'd like to make a toast to the man who somehow survived a hospital ICU and built a tech empire in 12 months. I second that motion, Detective Sarah Lynn called out from across the room. She walked over, looking surprisingly relaxed out of her usual police jacket. Although I still think you should have taken a longer vacation after the trial ended, Ethan. Work is my vacation, Sarah, I joked, clinking my glass against hers. Besides, keeping up with your department's security updates keeps me plenty busy. Speaking of the department, Sarah said, leaning against the edge of the conference table, The prosecutor called me this morning with a final update on the case. The room quieted down slightly as Marcus and Nora looked over at her. What did they say? Marcus asked, his tone turning protective. Julian's appeal was completely rejected, Sarah answered firmly. The appellate court upheld his 20-year sentence without parole eligibility for the first 15. And Chloe's probation agreement was finalized yesterday. She's required to complete 500 hours of community service and pay restitution to your former investors. Nora let out a quiet breath. It still amazes me how quickly they brought down their own lives just out of pure greed. Greed always leaves a trail, Sarah said, shaking her head. They thought they were the smartest people in the room, but they forgot that actions carry consequences. How do you feel about it, Ethan? Marcus asked gently, studying my expression closely. Hearing that it's officially over? I took a slow sip of my drink, looking at the faces of the people standing around me. A year ago, I was lying broken in a hospital bed, wondering if my entire life had been a lie. Now, surrounded by true allies, the mention of Chloe and Julian didn't provoke a single surge of anger or bitterness inside me. Honestly, Marcus, I replied softly, I don't feel anything toward them at all. Their choices led them where they are, and my choices brought me here. Justice took care of the rest. That is the healthiest thing you've said all year, Marcus smiled, patting my back firmly. Now, go enjoy your own party. You've been staring at financial reports since 6 in the morning. I think I will step outside for a moment, I said, setting my glass down on the table. I want to catch the sunset. I walked through the double glass doors leading out onto the private office balcony. The cool evening air washed over my face, carrying the distant, energetic hum of the city streets below. Below me, Boston stretched out into the distance, its skyscrapers gleaming beneath a sky painted in deep violet, orange, and gold. I leaned against the smooth metal railing, watching the sun dip slowly beneath the horizon. Looking back over the past year felt like reviewing a story written about someone else. There was a time when I believed my purpose was tied to Bennett Technologies, to making Chloe proud, and to securing approval from people who never truly respected me. I had spent 7 long years trying to prove my value to a wife who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stool for her own ambition. When the crash happened, I thought my life was over. The betrayal had cut so deeply that I doubted my own sanity, my own strength, and my own capacity to trust another human being. I had wanted them to pay. I had wanted them to see what they had lost. But as I stood on this balcony, watching the golden light fade into dusk, a quiet realization settled in my chest. Watching Julian get led away in handcuffs hadn't made me whole. Watching Chloe beg on her knees hadn't healed my broken trust. The fall of my enemies was just a byproduct of their own corruption catching up with them. My true victory wasn't destroying the people who betrayed me. It was choosing not to let their betrayal destroy me. It was waking up every morning in that hospital bed and deciding to fight for my life. It was having the courage to build advanced technologies from the ground up, not out of spite or revenge, but out of a genuine desire to create something ethical and lasting. It was learning to surround myself with people like Marcus, Nora, and Sarah, people who valued truth, loyalty, and integrity over quick profits. Hey, Marcus said softly, sliding the balcony door open and stepping out beside me. Everything all right out here? Everything is perfect, I said, turning to my brother with a genuine smile. For the first time in my life, everything is completely perfect. Marcus smiled, placing his hand on my shoulder as we watched the final rays of light disappear over the city skyline. I was no longer the unsuspecting victim of someone else's greed. I was no longer seeking approval, holding on to bitterness, or waiting for an apology that would never come. I had survived the fire, shed the weight of the past, and emerged as the architect of my own future, a man who finally understood his own worth.